Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Omar Khalid. But today is the 18th of November 2021. These are the stories that we will be discussing during the course of our show. We will begin with the 552nd birth anniversary of Baba Guru Nanak, for which the Sikh yatris are coming from across the world, including from India. More than 2,400 Sikh yatris have arrived from India, and of course that included also the Punjab Chief Minister Charanjit Channi, who arrived with a delegation, and of course he was received here, and they have just left some time back. Nevertheless, this is a huge occasion for the Sikh community across the world to visit their holy shrines that are located in Pakistan, and of course all this through the Kartarpur corridor, that is initiative, that is the initiative that was launched by the current government. This is going to be our first segment. Then, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about India and the Hindutva ideology and how it is going towards a very, very negative connotation across the world and including India, where the minorities, whether it be the Sikhs, whether it be the Muslims, do not find themselves to be safe inside a community. And of course, our latest incident that has also happened in the United States is Veer Das, who has also talked about him living in two Indias. Then we'll be talking about Afghanistan, ladies and gentlemen, and Afghanistan, and how important it is for humanitarian aid to reach Afghanistan at the earliest. This is also a pledge that has been made by the United Nations of late. How quick will that be before it is too late? This is going to be our third segment. Of course, these are very important issues, whether it be humanitarian issue, whether it be what is happening across the border in India, or whether it be the 552nd birth anniversary of Baba Guru Nanak. Let's begin with, of course, Baba Guru Nanak ji and his 552nd birth anniversary that is going to happen tomorrow. Sikh yatris from across the world have arrived in Pakistan, more than 8,000. That includes more than 2,000 Sikh yatris from across the border. More in the following report.
In a magnificent display of interfaith harmony and quest for regional peace, Pakistan is wholeheartedly welcoming Sikh community from India and worldwide to attend the birth anniversary of the religion's founder, despite repeated Indian procrastinations. Thousands of Sikh pilgrims from around the world have arrived in Pakistan, and over 8,000 Sikh pilgrims are expected to arrive from United Kingdom, Canada and India to attend one of the most profound festivals of Sikhism in Pakistan. Pakistan issued 2,890 visas to Indian Sikhs to attend Baba Guru Nanak's birth anniversary, and so far 2,500 pilgrims have arrived via Wagah border. Premier Imran Khan has undertaken special initiatives to facilitate the pilgrims, while Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has extended warm welcome to the Sikh pilgrims. Gurdwara Darbar Sahib in Kartarpur, being holiest site, is significant for the Sikh community as it was built to pay tribute to Guru Nanak, who established the town of Kartarpur in 1515. It is also his final resting place. Hailed as the Corridor of Peace, the landmark visa-free corridor first opened in 2019 for Baba Guru Nanak's 550th birth anniversary as a gift from the people of Pakistan to Sikh community of South Asia and the world. The opening of the corridor is a reflection of the wishes of the people of Pakistan for peaceful coexistence, and thus Government of Pakistan is facilitating this kind of exchange between people of both nations to create a better atmosphere between India and Pakistan.
Now, to talk more about this, we've been joined by a correspondent from Lahore, Zimran, Danish, who gives us more details about the arrival of the Sikh yatris.
Yes, thank you, Omar. I'm here at Kartarpur and of course, the Indian delegation which visited this area, it has just left. It was led by Indian Punjab Chief Minister Charanjit Singh Channi, and he led a delegation here from Indian Punjab. He came here, he visited the area, he paid his respects at the Data Guru Nanak Mausoleum. And of course, he toured the area as well. A large number of Indian delegations came from Punjab, and they visited all the spots at this area. And of course, there were men and women, and there were also children, family members as well. They performed their religious duties here at the Gurdwara. And of course, for them, this is holy land, of course, a very important place. And they come here every day. Tens of thousands of Sikhs have come from all over the world in Pakistan to carry out their religious duties here. In the next 5 to 6 days, they'll be going in various cities of Punjab. But of course, this is the Gurdwara Kartarpur, the most important and most holiest places for the Sikhs. And for the Chief Minister, he recently became the Chief Minister of Punjab in India, and he visited this place. He spoke to the media. He said that this area is holy for the Sikh community all over the world. It is very, very important. And they're very happy that Pakistan has opened its gates. It has been open for years, but of course, for almost 2 years, it was closed for various reasons. But now it has reopened, and Sikh yatris, pilgrims from all over the world and Pakistan are visiting this area every day. More are expected to come in the coming days as well. And of course, very stringent security measures at place. And customs and policemen and army personnel were here deployed, and they were the Indian delegation. They were given a tour. They saw all the arrangements, all the facilities, and they were very, very happy about it. Gurdwara Kartarpur is one of the largest and gurdwaras in the world, and you have to come and see it. It's very well taken care of. And it's not just a holy place for Sikhs. Muslims and people of all religions come here to visit this place to see how it is. And a very important event, and of course the delegation has just left. They were very happy. They went to the langar and visited the mausoleum as well, and they expressed their gratitude, and they said that they would return, and they're very happy. They also hope that these visits will improve the relations between India and Pakistan and decrease tensions. Yes, back to you.
Thank you very much, Ali Zimran. Danish, our correspondent from Lahore, giving us more details about the arrival of the Sikh yatris from across the world, including from India, and the way they've been received warmly by Pakistan. Pakistan has always regarded Sikhs as a very important community inside Pakistan, and of course they give them all the respect and all the cooperation whenever they come from across the world, including from India. This is an initiative of the current government to open the Kartarpur corridor, and this is an initiative that continues to reap fruit as far as the Sikh community across the world is concerned. So of course, happy 552nd birthday to Baba Guru Nanak ji, and of course to all the Sikh yatris across the world. Let's go to our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, now, and that concerns the Hindutva ideology and how that is wreaking havoc not only for the minorities inside of India but also outside. It is creating an instability. That is also what has been said by Shah Mahmood Qureshi Sahab, who's our foreign minister, who said that the Hindutva ideology was a threat to the region and global security. More in the following report.
The reinvention of Hindutva doctrine is dramatically reshaping India by exacerbating communal fault lines and weaponization of Hinduism for narrow political interests. The saffronization of India has rendered the country a horrible nightmare for minorities and low-caste Hindus who continue to suffer in a climate of fear and hate. In their bid to rewrite the history of India guided by Hindu populism, BJP regime is erasing Muslims and other communal groups from public spaces, inciting mob violence, protecting fundamentalist goons, and transforming India into a principally Hindu country. In the latest incident of Hindutva terrorism, Hindu fundamentalist goons attacked and set fire to the home of a former Indian Foreign Minister, Salman Khurshid, a Muslim from the main opposition Congress party, who published a book last month in which he compared the kind of Hindu nationalism that had flourished under Modi to extremist Islamic groups like ISIS. Sensing the gravity of the situation, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi underscored that the greatest threat to the region and global security emanated from the Hindutva ideology that drove Indian officialdom. In his address to the participants of the National Security and War Course at the National Defence University, Islamabad, Foreign Minister detailed Pakistan's quest for peace by citing that despite provocations from India, Pakistan opened the Kartarpur corridor in November 2019, giving Sikhs from India and the rest of the world visa-free access to one of their holiest sites. Prime Minister Imran Khan's vision for the region and for Pakistan-India relations consists of peaceful coexistence, interfaith harmony, and peaceful resolution of outstanding disputes. In BJP's India, minorities are increasingly forced to chant Jai Shri Ram or face violent consequences. India stands at the brink of genocidal violence against minorities, and the silence of international community is giving BJP tacit approval to perpetuate final solution against Muslim and other non-Hindu groups.
to talk more about the Hindutva ideology and how that has disturbed not only India but the world over. We've been joined by Basit Abbasi Saab. He's an analyst. Basit Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Basit Saab, when we talk about the Hindutva ideology, this is nothing new. It has been there since decades, but it has only gained prominence since the last few years. But now the dividends are extremely dangerous of such an ideology. Why, in your point of view, sir, is the world not taking cognizance?
This is the very simple reason. Very simple reason for that is that the world has a perception that A, India is an economic might, and B, the West feels that since the chief power in the West, United States, feels threatened by China, and they feel that perhaps India could be a bulwark against the Chinese when the need comes for that. It's a grievous mistake. India will never stand up to China, and it's only to gain sort of their nefarious mindsets and Hindutva ideology propagation that they have joined hand with the West. So this is the main reason, and as we have seen on various occasions, that when this world is watching silently, rather they're looking the other way, of all the militaristic actions in Kashmir and all sorts of state terror which is being perpetrated there, and not only Kashmir, all over the India. And if you compare that with the steps of Pakistan, then you see that what is the difference between statesmen and charlatans or the populist leaders. Indian Prime Minister is a populist leader. Populist leaders look for short-term gains, whereas the statesmen, they work for the long-term betterment of their people.
But Basit Saab, you said that some leaders look for short-term gains. Now, this is the second term of Narendra Modi in India. Do you feel that this short-term gain is slowly and steadily creeping in such a manner into the mindset of the Hindu community inside of India that their whole mindset, their whole mentality is now either changed or is in the process of completely changing?
It's very unfortunate. Look at India. It's such a diverse polity. And anybody with basic common sense would want to cement these diverse elements, linguistic, religious, cultural, social, all these differences. One would want to cement them. If you want to build a nation, you would want to cement those differences and sort of fill up those fissures if they are existing, already existing. But here we have a leader who's, you rightly said, won the second term in election and maybe wins the third. But he's actually trying to create more fissures rather than filling up those gaps and those
but doesn't the government, doesn't the BJP understand the reaction of such fissures, the ultimate result of such fissures? Isn't it going to result in the division of their own country?
Certainly, it will lead to destruction of India one day. But let me say that 4 years terms, 8 years or 10 years, do not really, they are so significant in a nation's history. So what we have seen, and look at the progress of India. India was a rising and shining power in Manmohan Singh's time. And they have continued on that path. And but still, if you compare their parameters, they are constantly coming down. So they had actually reached the apex of their achievements, and now there is a downward trend. This is a slow process because the support of West is always there to stoke them up, and but in the long run, this is not going to be good for India, not going to be good for the region. And
let's talk about Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Basit Abbasi Saab and what Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab also said recently. He said sustainable peace in South Asia is contingent about the settlement upon the settlement of this Kashmir issue. Is there going to be a Kashmir issue? Because as what we are hearing and watching, India is adamant at not finding a solution.
That's true, because they are enamored by their Hindutva ideology. And that is a divisive ideology. You don't want to give a breathing space to any other person than your own kith and kin. So this is dangerous for any nation. And I'm sure, as I just pointed out, that the economic parameters are eroding. And, when there's deharmonization in a country, there's a lack of stability. You can never make progress in an atmosphere where there's no stability. And this is what we are seeing in India, not only in Kashmir, but various Mizo, Nagaland, and Sikhs. Recently the Sikh diaspora in England, they carried out a referendum, and I'm sure if you ask 10 Sikhs, I think 8 of them would want to have an independent place or be away
All right,
from India.
final question, Basit Saab, and I'd like a very quick answer to that. We're a bit short of time. On the one hand, there are extrajudicial killings that are going on in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. There are issues with the minorities within India. On the other hand, when there are people who rightly criticize the Indian government, like Veer Das, who has just done it recently in a monologue. He and other persons, other journalists like Barkha Dutt and others are heavily criticized for telling people what is really going on in India. If the Indian government cannot take any form of criticism, so can they be ably called a rightful democracy or a country where democratic rights and freedoms are enjoyed?
Certainly not. In fact, when this is what is actually known as jingoism. When you throb the war drums, when you beat them so loud that the saner voices are sunk in them, then you actually are deprived of sanity. I wish, nobody would want to not listen to the saner voices. If you are wrong, your press, your judiciary, your other institutions, they are there to guide you and correct your course. But if you have played the tune so vehemently that all the other social institutions have joined you, then it's a recipe for disaster.
That is so true, Basit Saab, and it is a recipe for disaster. And if things are not taken into consideration by the world communities and the pressure not exerted upon India, our neighborhood country is going in a very, very wrong direction, and the repercussions are going to be extremely grave. Thank you very much, Basit Raza, Abbasi Saab, to have joined us, to have talked to us about the Hindutva ideology and philosophy of India and how that is wreaking havoc within India and creating issues that will no longer be able to be controlled by India if this goes on in the same vein. Let's go to our next segment, ladies and gentlemen, that concerns the Afghanistan situation, the humanitarian crisis that has time and again been highlighted by Pakistan as well as other countries. There have been pledges, nevertheless, the funds are still frozen by the United States and the World Bank. What needs to be done in this humanitarian catastrophe if this continues in the same vein? More in the following report.
Afghanistan is going through a chaotic situation since hasty US withdrawal, as the dramatic military takeover of Afghanistan by the Taliban has prompted the US and international financial institutions to cut ties with the country. Afghan central bank assets worth more than $9 billion are frozen by the US, triggering a liquidity crisis. The war-ravaged country stands at the brink of grave humanitarian crisis owing to financial meltdown followed by widespread famine and harsh winter. Amid looming human tragedy, the Taliban government sent an open letter to the US Congress, urging American lawmakers to help unfreeze their country's assets, besides issuing ominous warnings of a mass refugee exodus from Afghanistan. Pakistan, which neighbors Afghanistan, fears that an economic and humanitarian crisis will have a spillover effect on it. It already hosts nearly 3.5 million Afghan refugees. The UN World Food Programme has already issued multiple warnings of food insecurity and risk of large-scale deaths from hunger in Afghanistan in the next few months. The Troika Plus group, comprising Pakistan, China, Russia and the US, met in Islamabad against the backdrop of growing alarm over the situation in Afghanistan, and it acknowledged concerns about the serious liquidity challenges. Premier Imran Khan has periodically pressed the international community to incentivize the Taliban's new administration in order to bring the current crisis to an end, instead of trying to control Afghanistan from the outside. Afghanistan stands at the historic crossroads and the collapse of Afghan government will dangerously imperil regional and global security. Thus, it's crucial for international community to remain positively engaged with Afghanistan and develop a long-term roadmap to advance the agenda of political engagement, economic integration and regional connectivity of the country.
Now, to talk more about this grave humanitarian issue, economic catastrophe that is engulfing Afghanistan and the need for the world to do something before it's too late, we've been joined by Omar Aamir. He's a researcher at CAS. Omar, thank you very much to have joined us. Omar, let's begin with the letter, the open letter that has been sent to the US Congress by Mr. Muttaqi that calls for urgent aid and the unblocking of the Afghan assets and the sanctions to be lifted. Do you feel that there is going to be a reaction soon by the US, or do you feel it's going to continue in the same vein? I mean, there's going to be a status quo as far as the non-lifting of sanctions and, of course, the Afghan assets are concerned.
So let me get to the facts first. The United States has frozen around $9.6 billion of Afghan assets in the New York Federal Reserve and other financial institutions. So what I believe is that America has a moral obligation because of the external intervention that it was involved in for the past 20 years. So it has a moral obligation to lift the Afghan economy, which is facing a dire humanitarian catastrophe and a socio-economic catastrophe as well. So what I believe is that, for example, there cannot be dual standards in this regard. For when the World War II ended, there was a Marshall Plan to lift Germany, West Germany, out of the crisis and out of the economic mess that had been created by the Allied powers and the Soviets over there. So Afghanistan might fall into the Chinese camp. That is one of the concerns of the Americans, which I believe. However, to avoid this, there is a need for America to unfreeze those assets to build the goodwill in the country.
Do you feel those assets will be unfrozen? Because as we speak, these assets still remain in limbo.
Yes, I agree, but I mean, there's an obduracy by the American government in this regard, and it does not suit a superpower of American stature, because they have they have spent rather, not invested. It was, I won't say it is an investment, because $2.5 trillion over the last 20 decades, and what the Afghan economy has been affected by, it would be classified as a Dutch disease. So Dutch disease is something which might, for example, it might look as a good news for the economy. However, it is not a good news for the economy, because all of that, majority of that $2.5 billion was in the defense spending of the NATO forces that were stationed there. So it might have looked a huge, colossal amount of foreign investment. However, that was all going towards the security needs.
Let's talk about today's events and the crisis that engulfs Afghanistan as we speak. The World Food Programme has talked about it. Of recently, Deborah Lyons, who is the United Nations Special Representative for Afghanistan, has also said that there is a humanitarian catastrophe in Afghanistan, and she says almost 60% of Afghanistan's population is facing crisis levels of hunger. Now, when the United Nations puts up so many alarms, why is the world not reacting the way it needs to?
Okay, so
I mean, let's put aside the United States, but what about the other countries?
The other countries, the European Union last month pledged $1.15 billion. Their representative, Ms. Ursula von der Leyen, she pledged $1.15 billion, and we have already seen the World Food Programme. They are investing in it, and other multilateral institutions. The heads are coming together, and they are trying to figure out a solution over here. But the main obduracy is from the main stubbornness, I would say, is from the United States at this point, because United States holds veto power in most of the multilateral institutions, the financial institutions, IMF, the World Bank, and basically the world order has been shaped largely by the United States and its whims. So in this way, it holds substantial leverage of how to maneuver these financial
But you know, Omar,
assets.
if you don't maneuver these financial issues or these the money in the right direction in a way so as to help the people in need, especially when it comes to a humanitarian crisis and a hunger crisis that is engulfing Afghanistan, there are a lot of risks that are involved with that as well. There is also a risk of terrorism reaping again in Afghanistan, other issues that reap again. The people in Afghanistan won't sit without any food for long. They will try to resort to other means. Doesn't the world have a responsibility to do something before it's too late in that respect as well?
I totally agree with you that there is a responsibility to prevent another wave of extremism and people succumbing to the ideology of the terrorist organizations. And in this regard, there's a huge imperative upon the world superpowers who have done an external intervention collectively for the last 20 years. So, but I must say here that the main concern which I believe of the United States is that if they unfreeze those assets, it might go to a country which might be in the future, in the near future or in the midterm future, it might fall into the Chinese camp. So that is their main concern.
So why don't they give it to the United Nations for one? I think they have enough confidence in the United Nations. There is an office of the United Nations still open in Afghanistan. They could send the money there in form of aid, in form of food or in some other form that could help the people of Afghanistan.
There are multiple ways if they want to unfreeze those assets, and I'm not saying they should hand it directly to the new regime, but if they want to help the people of Afghanistan, there are multiple ways they can undertake that. They can create some special institutes, financial institutes, and they can even, for example, directly involve themselves in, for example, say building of schools or building of dams or disaster management infrastructure, or there are multiple ways that those $9.6 billion can be brought into the Afghan economy circulation. So the main concern should be that it stays within that economy rather than going towards a predatory economic machinery or being again shipped out of the country, because the need now is to get that finance into the Afghan economy to prevent the humanitarian and socio-economic catastrophe that is right around the corner.
Omar, the countries that are in the neighborhood, that is, for example, Russia, for example, China, for example, Iran, Central Asian countries, India as well. Pakistan has been doing whatever it can from its end. We have also pledged aid that Shah Mahmood Qureshi Sahab announced. We have also been helping Afghanistan directly and indirectly. What about the other neighboring countries? How much of an onus of responsibility lies on them as well?
So, firstly, Pakistan itself is not in a very enviable economic situation nowadays. It is looking to get the IMF tranche. So that is again, Pakistan is not in such a situation that it can aid completely and overcome the impending crisis which is brewing in Afghanistan. So what I foresee is rather a Western-led effort in this regard, because the regional countries, China is buying time. China is a country which looks to, from what I see, as a long-term strategy in Afghanistan. So obviously they know that the United States has evacuated from there, and so the chips are falling in place for them. However, right now what I believe is that the United States has the moral obligation to aid, and it is the one that undertook the external intervention. So that is where the onus lies.
All right. Now, last question that comes from a quote from Deborah Lyons, who is the United Nations Special Representative for Afghanistan, and she said, quote unquote, that the humanitarian catastrophe in Afghanistan is preventable because the main cause is financial sanctions of the Taliban, and these sanctions have paralyzed the banking systems, affecting every aspect of the economy. Shouldn't the US, shouldn't the other, associated powers, for example, the World Bank or the IMF, release a tranche of that aid, and once they are stabilized, then discuss on the terms and conditions and the modalities for further releasing the tranche of aid?
It can go in a couple of, or 5 or 6 tranches. That is again one option that can be undertaken. However, right now 90% of the population is at risk of falling below the poverty line. So again, that might create a refugee crisis for Pakistan.
Of course.
That might drive
That is something that has been highlighted by Shah Mahmood Qureshi Sahab in the past.
Exactly. And secondly, it might drive some of those towards other extremist ideologies. And thirdly, it might result in a complete collapse of the government there. So that is something which is not suitable to either the regional powers or even to Europe, because there's going to be a mass exodus of refugees towards Europe as well, and lastly to the United States as well, because United States has invested a lot of human resource as well as financial resource in the last 20 years. So another civil war is something which
is unaffordable for anybody, for either for Afghanistan or for the neighboring countries. Thank you very much, Omar Aamir, to have joined us, researcher at CAS. Ladies and gentlemen, Afghanistan, a country in crisis, especially humanitarian and economic. We need to do something, and we need to do something very quickly before it's too late. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news stories and segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe, follow the SOPs and get yourselves vaccinated. Allah Hafiz.